6:47 a.m., 43 floors above a frozen city. A woman stands at the glass. $2 billion sits on her desk. Everything is ready, except the small thing tapping under her ribs that will not stop. Down in the executive lot, an old pickup truck is parked where it isn't supposed to be. The driver stands beside it in the cold, hands in his pockets, eyes on the building. He doesn't argue when the tow truck arrives. He doesn't ask them to wait. He just watches it go. Then he walks toward the river. Upstairs, she gives the order without looking. By tomorrow, every law firm in this city will know her name. By next week, a federal investigation will be opened, and somewhere in a back bay on the south side, the quiet man whose truck she had towed will pick up a contract she was hours away from signing, read 3 pages, and go still. The wind off Lake Michigan had teeth that January morning. It cut through wool coats and cashmere scarves like neither existed, rattled the glass of the financial district, turned the sidewalks into corridors of frozen breath and steam. 6:47 a.m. Chicago hadn't decided whether to wake up yet. But the woman on the 43rd floor of Moore Capital Partners had been awake for hours, because sleep was a luxury. Emily Moore had stopped affording herself 14 months ago, the day they handed her the title CEO. She stood at the window, palm pressed against the cold glass, watching her own breath ghost across the pane and disappear. 30 years old, the youngest CEO in the company's 62-year history, the daughter of the man who built it from a single rented office in 1962 to a $5 billion institution. And today, in less than 8 hours, she was going to close the largest merger that institution had ever attempted, $2 billion. Lewis Financial Group, a West Coast firm with assets that fit Moore Capital's portfolio like a missing rib. The papers were on her desk. The lawyers had signed off. The investors had been wined and dined and reassured. Everything was ready, except her, because something underneath her ribs wouldn't stop tapping. Not nerves, not excitement, something older than both. Something she'd learned to listen to in her years at the investment bank in New York. The kind of feeling that told you a deal was off before you could explain why. She turned from the window. Her reflection caught her in the dark glass. Black hair pulled tight. Charcoal suit that cost more than most people's rent. Eyes that had forgotten how to look 30. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She knew without looking. 6:52 a.m. Her father texted at the same time every morning of every important day. Don't screw this up. That was it. No signature, no good luck. Just a command issued from one floor above her, where Joseph Moore still kept the corner office he'd technically retired from 14 months ago. The office every board member still walked into when they wanted real answers. She deleted the text. She didn't reply. She never did. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Amanda Perez, 26 years old, 3 years on the job, sharper than half the senior partners. The legal team needs a final timeline confirmation. Tell them 2 hours. Yes, ma'am. Also, the caterers are downstairs setting up for the signing. Tell them where the flowers go. Yes, ma'am. That's why I pay you, Amanda. The intercom clicked off. Emily closed her eyes. She knew she sounded like a woman who'd forgotten how to ask instead of order. She knew Amanda flinched a little every time. She knew, and she did it anyway, because softness in this building was a weakness someone else would use against you before lunch. 7:15. Emily took the elevator down to the lobby. The event planner had transformed the marble floor into something between a corporate showcase and a winter wedding. White cloth, champagne fountain, a podium with both company logos projected on the wall behind it. Investors at noon. Press at 12:30. Signing at 1 o'clock sharp. She walked the room. The flowers were wrong. Too soft, too feminine. Replace them with something architectural. The lighting on the right side cast a shadow on the podium that would look bad on camera. Fix it. The temperature was 2 degrees too warm. Fix it. She catalogued every detail like she was checking a battlefield before the troops arrived. Because that's what today was, a battlefield. And she planned to walk off it the winner. Her phone rang in her pocket. Jacob Walker, head of security, a former Chicago cop with 22 years on the force, and a voice like gravel poured into a styrofoam cup. Ms. Moore, we got a situation in the executive lot. What kind of situation? There's a truck. Pickup, old, parked in your reserved space. I asked the driver to move it. He's not exactly being difficult. He's just not moving, so tow it, ma'am. The owner's standing right here. I thought maybe you'd want to, Jacob. I don't care if he's standing on his head reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. That's my space. Tow it now. The line went quiet for half a second longer than it should have. Then, copy that, she hung up. She walked back through the lobby toward the elevator. entitled people. That was the problem with this city. Every contractor and electrician and HVAC tech thought an executive lot at 7 in the morning was fair game. Well, he was about to learn it wasn't. The elevator doors slid shut. Emily caught her own reflection again. She didn't recognize the woman looking back. She told herself she didn't need to. Back upstairs, she opened the merger documents. Page 1, Recitals, Standard. Page 8, Definitions, Standard. Page 23, Representations and Warranties, Standard, Standard, Standard. The word started to mean less the more she saw it, because that was the trick of contracts this size. The dangerous parts didn't look dangerous. They looked standard. They looked boring. They looked like every other clause in every other deal anyone had ever signed in a glass tower in a downtown that didn't sleep. 30 minutes in, Amanda knocked. Came in without waiting. The truck's been towed. Jacob said the owner didn't argue, just stood there, watched it happen. Then walked down toward the river. Emily didn't look up. Good, that's it. It felt weird. He said the guy was calm, like he'd been expecting it. Amanda, I really don't care about the emotional state of a random contractor. At 7 in the morning, the door closed softly behind her. Emily made it through 6 more pages before she realized she'd read the same paragraph 3 times, almost like he expected it. The phrase wouldn't sit still in her head. She shook it off. Focus, the merger, that's what mattered. 9:30. The office had come alive around her. Junior analysts running between floors. Senior partners working the phones in their offices with the doors closed. The press team rehearsing statements. The energy was electric and dangerous and wonderful, and Emily walked through it like she owned every molecule, because she did. Today, at least today, she called legal into the main conference room. 7 lawyers, the full team. Timothy Clark at the head, her chief counsel, 58 years old. 30-year career. Tired in that particular way that lawyers get tired, which is to say resigned. Governance structure is clean, Timothy said, fingering through his notes like he'd done this dance 1,000 times because he had. Board composition is locked. Voting rights are locked. Financial disclosures match. Asset transfer schedules align. Integration timeline, 12 months. Standard for a deal this size. Termination clauses, mutual consent. Penalty structures symmetric. He looked up at her over his glasses. Emily, we've been through this 17 times. It's solid. Around the table, the other 6 lawyers nodded. Expensive heads on expensive necks attached to expensive bodies in expensive chairs. All of them confident, all of them tired, all of them ready to be done. Emily looked at each of them. One more read. I want every cross-reference checked, every defined term tracked back to its origin. If anything has changed even slightly between the 3rd revision and the final, I want it flagged. Timothy let out a breath through his nose. We'll get it done. The lawyers filed out. Emily stayed. She walked to the window, 43 floors. She told herself she was looking down. She wasn't. She was looking past her own reflection, trying to find the woman she used to be before the title, before the office, before the text that just said, "Don't screw this up." Her phone rang. Jeffrey Lewis, CEO of Lewis Financial Group, the man she was about to absorb into her empire. 56 years old, old California money. 2nd-generation chairman of a firm his father had built up from a savings and loan. Today was his exit. His golden parachute. Emily, big day. How are we feeling? Good, Jeffrey. Your team ready? Absolutely. We'll be there at noon. Listen, I just wanted to thank you again for being so flexible during the negotiations, especially on the affiliate disclosure modifications. Your team really came through. Emily's stomach did something quiet and bad. What modifications? A pause. The thinnest little pause. She heard it like a crack in a wall. The amended disclosure timelines on the subsidiary reporting. Section 12, I think. Your legal signed off 2 weeks ago, right? Of course. Looking forward to seeing you at noon, Jeffrey. She hung up. She didn't move. She stood at the window and her body had gone very still. The kind of still that happens right before a fight, or right before you realize you're already losing one. Affiliate disclosure modifications. She didn't remember approving anything called that, which meant either she'd missed it, or someone hadn't shown it to her. She picked up her phone, dialed Timothy. Emily. We just walked out of the conference room. Timothy. What is Jeffrey Lewis talking about? What do you mean? He just called me to thank me for being flexible on affiliate disclosure modifications. I didn't approve anything called affiliate disclosure modifications. The pause on Timothy's end was different than Jeffrey's pause. Longer, heavier. Hold on. Let me check my notes. She heard pages flipping, a chair creaking. Timothy breathing through his teeth. the way he always did when he was trying to decide whether to admit something. Section 12, subsection 14. There was a minor adjustment requested in the third revision regarding the timing of post-closing affiliate disclosure for entities with complex holding structures. Standard practice. We see it in maybe 60% of deals this size. Define minor. They asked for the option to disclose certain affiliate relationships on a delayed schedule rather than at closing. It allows them flexibility in how they structure their post-merger reporting. Timothy? I don't remember reading that revision. It came through the standard channel. The phrase sat in her head like a bad piece of meat. Bring it to my office now. Every page, every revision, every red line. I want to see it, Emily. Now, Timothy. She hung up. Her heart had decided to pick up the pace. She walked to her desk. She sat down. She put both palms flat on the glass surface and breathed through her nose. The rule she'd learned in New York. When your gut says something is wrong, your gut is right. The lawyers can argue, the bankers can spin, the CEOs can charm, but the gut never lies. And right now her gut was screaming. 10:15. Amanda's voice through the intercom, quieter than usual. Miss Moore. There are some investors here. They're asking to speak with you. They don't have appointments. Which investors? Mr. King. Mr. Hernandez. They don't look happy. Emily was already standing. Conference room B. 5 minutes, she walked the long hallway. The glass walls of the conference rooms gave her a view. Eric King and Christopher Hernandez. Two of Moore Capital's largest institutional investors. Eric was 64, built like a former college lineman, with a reputation for systematically dismantling companies that disappointed him. Christopher was younger, sharper, the kind of man who wore his ambition like aftershave. They were standing. Both of them, which was never a good sign. She opened the door, gentlemen. I wasn't expecting you until the ceremony. Eric turned. We need to talk, now. About what? About the deal you're signing in 3 hours. Emily kept her face still. My team has vetted every aspect. If you have specific concerns. Christopher laughed without any humor in it. Specific concerns. He held up a tablet. Section 12. Sub 14. Clause 9. Section 8. Subsection 3. Clause 16. Section 19. Subsection 7. Read them in that order, Emily. Tell me what you see. Her mouth went dry. She didn't have the contract memorized to that level of detail. No CEO did. That's what the lawyers were for. But the fact that two of her largest investors were quoting specific subclauses meant they'd found something her own legal team had either missed or chosen not to flag. Eric watched her. We hired an independent firm to do a parallel review 3 days ago, without telling you, because we've been seeing patterns in this industry that worry us. The independent firm got back to us at 4 o'clock this morning. They told me what? They told us, Christopher took over, that if you sign this contract as currently written, by month 18 post-closing, majority control of Moore Capital Partners will pass to Lewis Financial Group's parent corporation, not through a vote, not through a public acquisition, through a sequence of automatic triggers tied to integration milestones, triggers that were buried across 3 different sections of the contract, in language that doesn't even look related until you read it in the right order. Emily's hand found the back of a chair. It was the only way to keep her body from sitting down without her permission. That's not possible. That's exactly what the independent firm said. Until they ran the cross-references. Until they substituted the right terms. Until they mapped the timeline. Then it became very possible. Then it became inevitable. Eric stepped closer. We're not here to kill your deal, Emily. We're here because we've invested heavily in this company and we don't want to watch you sign it away because 7 of the best lawyers in Chicago missed a trap. Give me an hour, she said. Her voice was steadier than her hands. We don't have an hour, Christopher's voice. The press is here at 12:30. The investors at noon. The cameras are already being set up. We need to know what you're going to do before you walk down to that lobby. Then give me 30 minutes. She walked out of the conference room. She didn't run. CEOs of $2 billion firms didn't run in their own buildings. But she walked fast enough that her heels made a sound she'd never heard them make before. Back in her office, she pulled up the contract on her screen. Section 12. Subsection 10. Clause 9. She read it 3 times. It looked like nothing. It looked like every other affiliate provision in every other contract she'd ever seen. But she had learned in New York that the dangerous things looked like nothing. That was their whole job. She picked up the phone. Timothy. Get back here. Bring Nicole Torres. Nicole. The newest hire. 28 years old. Stanford Law. Joined 11 months ago. Quiet. Bookish. Asked uncomfortable questions in meetings and then apologized for asking them. The kind of lawyer Emily had hired specifically because the others were getting too comfortable. 5 minutes later, they were both in her office. Timothy had brought the entire 7-person team. Emily turned her screen toward them. Read this. In this order. Subsection 14, Clause 9. Then Section 8, Subsection 3, Clause 16. Then Section 19, Subsection 7. Tell me what you see. The 7 lawyers leaned in. Reading, the room got very quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight. Timothy spoke first. It's standard affiliate language. Nicole's voice was small, but it cut through him. No, it isn't. Heads turned. Nicole was looking at the screen, her finger tracking across the words. If you read the 3 clauses sequentially, and you treat the term affiliate entity in Section 12 as referring to the parent corporation defined in Section 8, and then you trigger the rebalancing provisions in Section 19 against the integration milestones in Section 12, she trailed off. Her face changed, the kind of change you see on a person who has just understood something they wish they hadn't. Then, what, Nicole? Then by month 18, the parent corporation of Lewis Financial Group holds majority voting rights on the Moore Capital board, without a public acquisition. Without a vote, the triggers are automatic, tied to deliverables we'd have to hit as part of the standard integration. We can't even avoid them. They're the milestones we already agreed to in Section 12. The room went quieter than before. Timothy's face had gone the wrong color. That's a sophisticated read of the language, Nicole. But it's not necessarily. Timothy, Emily's voice was a knife. Look at her face. The other 6 lawyers were looking at Nicole. Nicole was looking at the screen. None of them were arguing with her, which was the worst answer anyone could have given. Get out. All of you. Except Nicole. The office emptied. Nicole stayed, standing, holding her copy of the contract like it might burn her. Sit down, Nicole. She sat. Tell me, from the beginning. What did you just see? Nicole walked her through it, slowly, carefully, the way a doctor walks a patient through a diagnosis they don't want to give. The trap wasn't in any single clause. The trap was in how the clauses talk to each other. Each one looked harmless alone. Together they formed a sequence, a mechanism. A door that locked behind you 18 months after you walked through it. By the time Nicole was finished, Emily had stopped breathing in a way that felt natural. Her chest moved when she remembered to make it move. Nicole, yes ma'am, if I sign this contract today. By month 18, you don't own this company anymore. Nicole's voice barely made it across the desk. Lewis Financial Group's parent corporation does. Emily sat very still. The clock on her wall ticked. The Chicago wind pressed against the glass. Somewhere below her, in a lobby she'd spent $300,000 decorating, a champagne fountain was being filled by a man earning $22 an hour. The press was on its way. The investors were on their way. Her father was upstairs in his retired office that wasn't retired, waiting to watch his daughter close the biggest deal in his company's history. And she was about to call all of it off, because if she didn't, by the time she figured out what had happened, she would have signed away the only thing he'd ever cared about more than her. She picked up the phone. She dialed Jeffrey Lewis. He answered on the second ring. Emily, please tell me you're not calling to push back the signing time. Her voice didn't shake. She didn't let it. I'm calling to push back the signing time, Jeffrey. By how long? 48 hours. The silence on the other end was the kind of silence that had teeth. Emily, the press is coming. Your investors are coming. Half of San Francisco is on a plane right now to be in your lobby at noon. You can't push this. I just did, Emily. What are you doing? I'm doing my job, Jeffrey, which is reading my own contract before I sign it. I'll call you in 48 hours. We'll either sign then or we won't. Goodbye. She hung up. Her hand was steady. Her hand was very steady. Because the only thing keeping the rest of her from falling apart was the small, quiet, savage satisfaction of having said the word goodbye to a man who'd been planning to own her company by the end of next year. Her phone rang almost immediately. Her father. She let it ring. It rang again. She let it ring. The third time she answered. Catherine. He still used her full name. He'd never adopted Emily. He thought the nickname was something her mother had given her, which was true, and he thought everything her mother had given her was something to grow out of, which was also true, at least to him. Bro, he stopped. He never stopped mid-sentence, Catherine. What is happening in my building? There's a problem with the contract. I'm postponing the signing. By how long? 48 hours. The pause that followed felt like a room being held underwater. You will come up to my office, right now, and you will explain to me how you are about to torpedo a $2 billion deal 45 minutes before the press arrives. Dad. Now, Catherine. She hung up. She looked at Nicole. Nicole hadn't moved. She was watching Emily the way you watch someone walk a tightrope across a highway. Nicole. Yes, ma'am. Stay in this office. Pull every revision of this contract going back to the original draft. Map every change. Find me the moment those 3 clauses arrived in the document. I want to know which version. I want to know who delivered it. I want to know who at our firm signed off on it. Yes, ma'am. Emily stood, smoothed her jacket, walked to the door, and Nicole. She turned back. Thank you. Nicole blinked, as if it had been a long time since anyone had thanked her for anything. You're welcome. Emily took the stairs to 44. She didn't take the elevator. The elevator gave you 60 seconds, and that was 60 seconds of trapped air with her own thoughts. The stairs gave her something to do with her legs. Her father's assistant didn't even look up when she walked past. She knew that walk. She'd seen it 1,000 times. The walk of a daughter heading into the room where she'd be made small again. Joseph Moore stood at his window. He was 63, iron gray hair, shoulders that still looked like the construction sites he'd worked through college before he'd ever touched a banking job. He didn't turn when she came in. Tell me what you're doing. The contract has a hidden control transfer mechanism. Hidden where? Across 3 sections. Designed to look unrelated. Nicole found it. Who found it? Nicole Torres. The new associate. Joseph turned. He looked at her like he was looking at someone he didn't quite remember. The new associate found something that Timothy missed. With my help, yes. With your help, yes. He walked across the office. He sat on the edge of his desk. Catherine. Sit down. I don't want to sit down. Sit down. She sat. He looked at her. Long enough that she felt the look settle into her bones. You're about to call off a deal that this company has been working on for 6 months. Yes. You're going to do that in front of every major financial reporter in this city. Yes. You're going to humiliate Lewis Financial. You're going to spook our investors. You're going to cost us hundreds of millions in market cap by close of business tomorrow. And you're going to do all of it based on a reading of contract language that 7 of our best lawyers have already signed off on. The 8th lawyer says they're wrong. The 8th lawyer is 28 years old, Catherine. So am I. 2 years ago, he didn't smile. He never smiled. He just kept looking at her. What if she's wrong? Then I postpone for 48 hours. I get a second opinion, and we sign on Wednesday. What if she's right? Then I just saved your company. He was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, the lake was the color of old steel. Catherine. If you walk down to that lobby and you cancel that signing in front of the press, I'm not canceling. I'm postponing. The press doesn't hear the difference. Then I'll make them hear it. He shook his head. You don't understand what you're starting. I understand exactly what I'm starting. Then why are you doing it? Because you didn't raise me to sign things I haven't read. He looked at her for a long moment. And in that moment something happened that she did not expect. His shoulders changed. Not much. Just enough. Just enough that she could see the man underneath the chairman. Get out, Catherine. Go do your job. She stood. Walked to the door. Catherine, she paused. If you're wrong about this, I know, Dad. She left. 11:58. 2 minutes before noon, the investors were arriving. Emily stood at the top of the lobby stairs and watched them come in through the revolving doors. Black coats, heavy shoes, hands stuffed in pockets against the cold. They looked up at her and they smiled. The smiles men smiled at women in lobbies of buildings they expected to make money in. Emily smiled back. She walked down the stairs. She walked to the podium. She turned on the microphone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time, and I apologize in advance for what I'm about to say. The room went still in the way. Only a room full of money can go still. Today's signing has been postponed by 48 hours. We've identified language in the final contract that requires additional review before I can put my name on it. I want to be clear. This is not a cancellation. This is a delay. We will be back here on Wednesday at 1 p.m., and we will either sign or we will publicly explain why we did not. Until then, I owe you nothing but my honesty, which is what you're getting right now. She didn't take questions. She walked off the podium. She walked back through the lobby. She walked back to the elevator. She didn't look at her father, who was standing in the doorway of the executive corridor watching her. She didn't look at Eric King, who was nodding once, sharply, like a man confirming a hand he'd already bet on. She didn't look at the reporters, who were lifting their phones and starting to type before she'd even finished her sentence. She walked. She took the elevator. She went back to her office. She closed the door, and she sat down. And for the first time since 6:47 that morning, she let her hands shake. The next 2 hours moved like someone had stuck a thumb on the clock. Bloomberg ran the story first, then Reuters, then the Wall Street Journal. The headlines were already forming. Young CEO postpones. Young CEO panics. Young CEO kills deal. They didn't know what they were writing. They were just writing. The phone calls started. Emily told Amanda to take messages on everything except the legal team. Nicole came back in at 1:15 with a stack of red lines as thick as a phone book. The clauses appeared in Revision 3. 2 months ago. Delivered by the Lewis Financial legal team to ours. Approved internally by, she paused, by Timothy. Timothy? Yes, ma'am. Emily nodded slowly. She wasn't sure what to do with that. So she set it aside. We need someone else. Someone outside the firm. Someone who can confirm what you found in time to either sign on Wednesday or walk away for good. Who? Timothy thinks there's only one person in Chicago who could read a contract like this fast enough. Who? He won't say. He thinks the man won't help. Get me Timothy. Timothy came in. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since the morning. Tell me who, she said. He doesn't take corporate work anymore. Tell me who. He doesn't return calls. He doesn't return emails. He has no public-facing presence. He sold his firm 5 years ago and disappeared. Timothy. Who? Robinson. Ryan Robinson. Emily blinked. The name was familiar in the way that names from another lifetime are familiar. The Robinson of Robinson Strategic Advisory. Yes. The one who sold to. Yes, for $340 million. Yes. He said he was retiring to go fishing. Joseph had laughed about it at the time. Said no one retired from this industry at 33. Said the boy would be back in 18 months. He hadn't been back. Where is he? Timothy hesitated. Where Timothy? Somewhere in Chicago. That's all I know. I have a contact who might know more. Get him. Get him today. I'll try, Timothy. Try harder. He left. Emily turned to Nicole. Nicole was watching her. Nicole. Yes, you know anyone who'd know where to find Ryan Robinson. Nicole hesitated in the way that lawyers hesitate when they're trying to decide whether to admit something. There's a paralegal. From my Stanford class. She works at a firm that handled one of his last divorces. Not Robinson's. A friend of his. She might know where his shop is. Shop, yes ma'am. He runs a shop now. What kind of shop? Auto repair. Cars, engines. That kind. Emily looked at her. Auto repair. Nicole nodded. That was his thing after he left finance. He bought a building on the south side and started fixing cars. Find me the address. 5 p.m. The sky had gone the color of an old bruise. Nicole had an address. South Side, Halsted and 47th. A converted warehouse off the main strip. The name on the building was Robinson Auto. Engine work. Transmission repair. By appointment only. The phone number on the sign went to a voicemail that hadn't been updated in 3 years. Emily put on her coat. Amanda. Yes, ma'am, I'm going out. When will you be back? I don't know. The roads were terrible. Salt and slush and the kind of cold that made the asphalt crack. She drove herself. She didn't take the company car. She didn't want her father to know where she was going. She didn't want anyone to know. She had her phone, her wallet, her laptop with the contract on it, and the address. She turned south. The neighborhood changed as she crossed Roosevelt. The buildings got lower. The signs got more handwritten. The cars on the street got older and meaner and more honest. Her Mercedes drew looks the way a tuxedo draws looks at a hardware store. She didn't care. She parked in front of Robinson Auto and sat in the car for a full minute before she got out. The shop was a single story. Brick. 2 bay doors. A small office to the side with a window cracked open even in the cold. Inside, she could see the silhouette of someone moving under a car on a lift. Classic rock leaked out through the open window. Something with steel guitar. Something old. She got out. The bell on the office door was the old-fashioned kind. A real bell, brass, tied to the door with a piece of leather. It rang when she walked in and the woman behind the desk looked up. Late 20s, coveralls, hair tied back with a bandana, grease on her cheek. Help you, the woman said. I need to speak to Ryan Robinson. The woman's expression closed. Boss doesn't take walk-ins. We're appointment only. I'm not a customer. The woman didn't say anything. She just watched. The way people watch when they've been told 100 times to get rid of strangers, and they're trying to decide whether this stranger is the 101st. Please, Emily said. I drove down here from downtown. I need 10 minutes of his time. That's all. The woman, Stephanie, by the patch on her coveralls, looked at her a long time. Then she sighed. Through that door. Back bay. Don't say I sent you, thank you, lady. Emily turned at the doorway. He's not gonna like this, I know. I'm just telling you. I know. She walked through the door. The shop opened up around her. The smell hit first. Motor oil, brake dust, old metal, the sweet sharp smell of solvent. 2 cars on lifts, a truck on jack stands. Tools hung on pegboard walls the way a chef hung knives. Everything had a place. Everything was in it. At the back, in the last bay, a man was bent over a workbench. He was a little under 6 feet, maybe 5'11". Dark hair going slightly silver at the temples. A flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow. Hands the color of an engine block. He was holding a fuel injector up to the light and turning it in his fingers, like he was reading a book in a language he'd written. He didn't look up. Shops closed for walk-ins. Stephanie should have told you. She did. I came back anyway. He kept his eyes on the injector. Bad call. I need 10 minutes. He set the injector down, slowly, carefully. The way you'd set down something that mattered. He picked up a rag from the bench. He started wiping his hands. Still didn't look at her, lady. Whoever you are, whatever it is. The answer's no. My name is Emily Moore. I'm the CEO of Moore Capital Partners. Now he looked up, and for a half a second something flickered across his face. Some kind of recognition, some kind of weight. Then it disappeared so fast she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. Moore Capital. He said, I postponed a $2 billion signing today. Because we found language in the contract that I don't fully understand. Timothy Clark, my chief counsel, told me you might be the only person in Chicago who could read it in time. He said you ran the most respected M&A advisory in this town, before you sold it to the Omaha Holding Company. He said, Lady, Ms. Moore, whatever, I'm done with that. I haven't done that work in 5 years and I'm not going to do it now. I have money, I don't need money. I have. He waved the rag. He looked tired. He looked older than 38. He looked like a man who had been asked this question before, and had learned to say no in a way that took less out of him each time. Ms. Moore. There are 6 firms in Chicago who do this work for a living. Hire one of them. They've been working on it for 2 months. They missed it. The associate who found it is 28. Then your associate is your guy. Build her up. Promote her. Make her chief counsel. But don't come down here looking for a ghost. Emily stood very still. She had not expected to be turned away in the first 30 seconds. She had assumed there would be a negotiation. She had assumed there would be a price. There wasn't. There was just a man who had stopped being the person Timothy Clark thought he was and didn't want to be him again. She tried something else. Who are we acquiring? He blinked. What? Who am I supposed to be merging with? Lewis Financial Group. He didn't move, Lewis. That's right. Out of San Francisco, he set the rag down. He turned, he faced her fully for the first time. Up close, his eyes were a kind of pale gray that she hadn't been ready for. They weren't unkind, they were just tired and alert. The 2 things together, which was a combination she didn't see often. Ms. Moore. Yes, you shouldn't sign that contract, I know. I came down here to make sure I don't. He shook his head slowly. You don't understand. You shouldn't even be negotiating with that firm. Why? Because Lewis Financial isn't who you think it is. Then who are they? He picked the rag back up. He started wiping his hands again, even though they were already clean. He was buying himself time. She could see it. She let him have it. After a long moment, he said, Look, I can't help you. I left this work for reasons that have nothing to do with you. I'm not going to be pulled back into it because you happened to walk into the wrong room with the wrong contract. I'm sorry. Drive carefully. The roads are bad. She didn't move. She felt the cold of the shop on her cheeks. She felt the heat of her own pulse in her ears. She felt every dollar of what was about to be lost. And she felt something else. Something smaller. Something she'd been turning over in her head ever since Amanda Perez had said the words. Almost like he expected it. She looked at him, standing in his flannel shirt with his clean hands and his shop and the radio playing something with steel guitar in the background. The truck. He stopped wiping. This morning, there was a Ford pickup in the executive parking lot at Moore Capital. The reserved space. My space. I had it towed. He didn't say anything, the driver. The man standing next to the truck. He didn't argue. He didn't ask security to wait. He just watched it go. And then he walked away. Toward the river. Now Ryan Robinson looked at her. The flicker she'd seen earlier wasn't a flicker anymore. It was steady. It was full. And it was not warm. That was you, she said. He nodded. Once. Slow. That was me. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. I didn't ask who you were. He set the rag down on the bench. I know. You didn't ask Jacob to wait. You didn't ask him to ask my name. You just said tow it, yes, and then you forgot about it. Until you needed something. The words sat in the air between them like a piece of evidence being entered into a record. She wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that it was a busy morning. She wanted to explain that she had a $2 billion deal on her desk, and a father upstairs and 17 things going wrong at once, and that a strange truck in her parking space was the smallest possible problem, and she had reacted accordingly. She wanted to say all of that. She didn't say any of it, because every word of it would have been true and none of it would have mattered. She said the only thing that did. I'm sorry. He looked at her a long time. You weren't wrong, he said finally. You just didn't care. There's a difference. The radio played. Steel guitar. Somewhere behind her in the front of the shop, Stephanie was running an impact wrench. She could hear the metal on metal of it through the door. He picked up his coat from a hook on the wall. Bring the contract, he said. What? Bring the laptop. The red lines, the revision history, all of it. Bring it back here. I need a quiet place to read. And I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Moore. I'm not doing this because you asked. I'm not doing this because Timothy Clark told you to find me. I'm not doing this because you said the word sorry, like you meant it, although that helped. I'm doing this because Lewis Financial Group's parent corporation is a fund called Apex Strategic Partners. And the man who runs Apex Strategic Partners is a man named Brian Thompson. And Brian Thompson has been waiting for someone like you for almost 2 years. So you bring me the contract, and I'll tell you exactly how he was planning to eat your company alive. Then I am going to go home to my daughter, and you and I are never going to speak about this again. Are we clear? Yes. Good. Get the laptop. She walked out of the shop in a kind of daze. She passed Stephanie, who didn't look up from the impact wrench. She walked back to her Mercedes. She unlocked it. She sat down. And for the second time in 12 hours, she let her hands shake. She drove back to Moore Capital. She took the elevator up to 43. She grabbed the laptop, the printed red lines, Nicole Torres, and a thermos of coffee. She did not tell her father where she was going. She did not tell Amanda where she was going. She did not tell anyone except Nicole, because Nicole was the only person in the building she fully trusted, which was a sentence she would not have been able to say out loud at 6:47 a.m. and could say without hesitation by 7:30 p.m. They got in the Mercedes. Nicole stared out the window as the city changed around them. We're going to the south side, Nicole said. Yes. To a mechanic? Yes. Who used to be a billionaire. Almost. 340 million? Same difference. Nicole was quiet a moment. Ms. Moore. Yes. Why him? Because his name was on a truck I had towed this morning. And he still said yes. The shop was waiting for them. Stephanie had closed up the front, but the back bay light was on. Ryan had cleared off the workbench at the back of the second bay and laid out a folding chair, an extension cord, and a cheap desk lamp. He had a small office in the rear corner where the smell of motor oil gave way to the smell of coffee and old books. He'd cleared his desk. He'd set out 3 more chairs. He pointed at the laptop, set it up. Pull the red lines from revision 3 forward. I want every change tracked. I want every signature attached. I want timestamps. We don't have timestamps on. We do, Ms. Moore. Your firm uses a redlining system that timestamps every revision. Pull them. Yes, sir. He looked at her. Don't sir me. I'm not your boss, yes. Habit. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You're going to need that energy for later. He sat down. He opened his laptop. It was a 4-year-old machine with a sticker of a cartoon shark on the back that Emily realized must belong to his daughter, Lily. She remembered Timothy saying the name. He pulled up his own copy of the contract. She didn't ask how he'd gotten it. She had a feeling it had not arrived through Timothy. He started reading. He did not take notes. He did not highlight. He just read. Nicole sat across from him, reading her own copy, cross-referencing. Emily sat to his right, on the folding chair under the lamp, with the printed red lines in her lap. She didn't read. She watched. She watched his face. She watched the way his eyes moved across the page, slow then fast then slow again, the way a man reads who has read 10,000 of these. She watched him stop on page 87. Stop. Read it twice. Move on. She watched him stop on page 212. Stop. Read it 3 times. Look up at the ceiling. Look back. Move on. She watched the clock above his desk. 40 minutes. 50. An hour. At the hour and 10 mark, he closed the laptop. He folded his hands. He looked at her. Ms. Moore. Yes. Who negotiated the integration timeline, our M&A team, working with Lewis Financial's corporate development group, who at our M&A team, 2 senior partners. I'd have to check the names. Check them. She made a note. Who at Lewis Financial? I don't have those names off the top of my head either. Get them. Both lists. By morning, yes. Why? Because the integration timeline isn't a timeline. It's a kill switch. Tell me. He opened the laptop again. He turned it toward her and Nicole. He pointed at the screen. Section 12. The integration milestones look like normal corporate housekeeping. Right. They're not. He scrolled. Section 8. Subsection 3. Clause 16. This is where the parent corporation is defined. Look at the definition. It doesn't mention Lewis. It mentions an entity. Quote, any affiliate or successor entity of Lewis Financial Group or its corporate parents, end quote, which sounds like nothing, which sounds like absolute boilerplate. Until you go to Section 19, he scrolled again. Section 19. Subsection 7, the board rebalancing provision. Tied to the milestones in Section 12, triggered by, quote, any change in the corporate parent or affiliate structure of the merging entity, end quote. He stopped. He looked at her. So if Lewis Financial's parent corporation, which is Apex Strategic Partners, restructures itself in any way during the 18-month integration window, including a routine internal restructuring of their own holding entities, that triggers the rebalancing in Section 19, which, when combined with the milestones in Section 12, hands the new majority of your board to whatever entity Apex restructures into. And they can structure it to be whoever they want. They can structure it to be Brian Thompson personally, because Apex restructures itself every 9 months as a matter of standard practice. So this trigger isn't a possibility. It's a certainty. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to fail. You don't have to miss a milestone. They have to do nothing except keep being themselves. And in 18 months, by the time anyone realizes what's happened, the man sitting across from you in his boardroom is named Brian Thompson, and your last name doesn't matter anymore. Emily sat very still. Nicole was looking at the screen with the look of someone who had been right and wished she hadn't been. Ryan closed the laptop. He looked at Emily. Quietly, you almost gave him your father's company. Yes. With a smile on your face? Yes. And the worst part, Ms. Moore, is that this isn't even unusual for him. This is just Tuesday for Brian Thompson. You're number 16 on a list that started with a textile mill in North Carolina in 2017 and has not stopped growing since. I am telling you this so you understand. Tomorrow morning when you walk back into your building, you are not just calling off a bad deal. You are interrupting a man's career. You are telling a predator he doesn't get to eat dinner tonight, and he is going to come for you with everything he has. Are you ready for that? She didn't answer right away. She thought about the lobby, the white tablecloths, the champagne fountain, the flowers she'd ordered replaced. She thought about her father. She thought about her mother, Karen, who had died when Emily was 12 and who had given her the name no one else in the family ever used. Emily, her mother had said, "You are not a Catherine, you are an Emily." And then her mother had gone away, and the world had insisted she be a Catherine ever since. She thought about all of that. And then she looked at the man sitting across the desk from her. The man whose truck she had ordered towed 12 hours ago without asking his name. The man who had every reason to send her home. The man who had not. "I'm ready," he nodded once. The way men nodded when they were not happy with an answer but accepted it. "Then go home, Ms. Moore. Sleep. Tomorrow we start." She stood. She put on her coat. At the door she turned back. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't look up from his laptop. He was already reopening the contract, already finding the next page, already starting on the next 48 hours of work he had sworn he would never do again. "Because you came back," he said. "Most people in your shoes wouldn't have." Emily slept 4 hours, maybe 3. She wasn't sure. The bedroom in her downtown condo had floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls and no curtains because she'd never been home long enough to want any. The city threw light at her all night. She'd given up on sleep around 4, made coffee, sat at her kitchen island, stared at the surface of her own untouched cup until the sky over the lake turned the color of unfinished steel. At 5:30 she got dressed. Not the suit from yesterday, a different one, charcoal. Because charcoal said nothing about the day before. Charcoal said today. Charcoal said she had not given up. By 6:15 she was back in the Mercedes. By 6:40 she was crossing Roosevelt. The neighborhood was still dark. Robinson Auto's back bay light was on. He hadn't gone home. She'd known he wouldn't. She walked in through the office. Stephanie wasn't there yet. The radio was on low. Something acoustic this time. Wood and string. She crossed to the back bay. Ryan was at his desk. Same flannel. Same hands. 2 empty coffee cups on the floor by his chair. A third one steaming next to his elbow. He didn't look up. You brought breakfast. Nope, should have. I didn't sleep either. You said you'd sleep. I said I'd try. He glanced up. The pale gray eyes were redder than yesterday. He'd been at it all night. The laptop screen had 4 windows open. 2 of them were contract drafts. One was a financial filing for an entity she'd never heard of. One was a news article from 2018 about a company in Ohio that had vanished. Sit down, Ms. Moore, Emily. What? Just Emily. We're past the Ms. Moore part. He looked at her another beat. Then nodded. Emily. Sit down. She sat. He turned the laptop. Spent the night doing this. Right, so here's where we are. 12 hours ago I told you about Section 12 and Section 19. That was the trap. That's the door that closes in 18 months. Last night I went looking for the keys to that door. Meaning who designed this? Because no $2 billion contract gets written with this kind of structure by accident. Someone wrote it. Someone delivered it. Someone made sure the right clauses ended up in the right revisions so that no junior associate flagged them. Brian Thompson? Brian Thompson doesn't write contracts, Emily. He pays people to. So I spent the night figuring out who. And I figured it out. Her stomach was already preparing itself. Who? Ryan didn't answer right away. He turned in his chair, picked up a folder from the floor next to the desk, a brown manila folder. The kind no one used anymore. He set it in front of her, opened it. 3 documents, a merger agreement from 2018, a merger agreement from 2020, a merger agreement from 2022. All 3 involved Apex Strategic Partners. All 3 had the same parent corporation language in Section 8, the same milestone triggers in Section 12, the same rebalancing provisions in Section 19. All 3 contracts had been drafted by the same outside counsel, Whitfield and Crane. White shoe firm out of New York. She knew the name. Half her industry knew it. They were considered untouchable. He pointed at the 3rd contract. The 2022 one. Look at page 11. She looked. The lead drafter listed at the top of the signature page was a name she didn't recognize. But the supervising attorney on the back page was a name she did. Timothy Clark. She stopped breathing for a second, then she breathed again. Different. Slower. Timothy worked at Whitfield and Crane. Before More Capital. Yes. Before he came to us. Yes. 8 years before he came to us. Yes. How long has he been at Moore? 15 years. She set the folder down. She felt the floor of her own life shift sideways an inch. So you're telling me? I'm telling you that the language in your contract is the same language that's been used in 3 other Apex deals over the last 7 years. And the man who signed off on your version. Wait, don't get there yet. He held up a hand. Don't get there yet. Because I'm not saying Timothy did this on purpose. I'm saying it's possible he saw the language and recognized it and made a judgment call about whether it mattered, or what. Or he made a different kind of judgment call. We don't know yet. I'm not going to accuse a man until we know. Her jaw was tight. Right. Right. So what do? We start by not telling him anything until I know whether he is sloppy or complicit. There's a 3rd option. There's always a 3rd option. He could be scared. Scared of who? Of Brian Thompson. Because Whitfield and Crane has had 3 partners die under what the New York papers very politely called unusual circumstances in the last decade. None of those deaths are provable as anything other than what they were reported as. But the pattern doesn't make me sleep easier. She stared at him. Are you telling me my chief counsel might be afraid for his life? I'm telling you that the world Brian Thompson lives in is more dangerous than the one you've been operating in. And I'm telling you we don't know yet which version of Timothy we're dealing with. Sloppy, compromised, scared. They all look the same from outside. We have to be careful, okay? A long pause. Outside the bay door, a delivery truck was unloading something at the body shop next door. Steel rattling on concrete, the sound of a city that didn't know what was happening on its 43rd floor. Ryan stood up, stretched his back, walked over to the small coffee maker on the shelf above his desk, poured her a cup without asking, handed it to her. Sat back down. We need to talk about your board, he said. What about my board? They're going to find out in about 2 hours that you postponed the signing. They're going to find out from Bloomberg and Reuters and the Journal before they find out from you. Some of them already know. Some are already calling. I have 9 messages on my office phone I haven't returned. Don't return them. What? Don't return them by phone. Bring them in. All of them. In person. Today by when? By noon, Ryan. There are 9 of them. 6 are in Chicago. 1's in New York. 1's in Houston. 1's in Palo Alto. Get them. All of them. By noon. In the same room. Today she started to laugh and then stopped. 'Cause he wasn't laughing. He was watching her. Why? She said. Because the people who are about to try to break you are going to do it through your board. And the only defense against that is putting everyone in the same room and forcing them to look at the same evidence at the same time. Once they see it, they can't unsee it. Once they all see it together, no individual member can be peeled off later and turned. That's how Thompson works. He picks one, he flatters him, he scares him, he makes him think he's the smart one. So we don't give him the chance, we get them all in a room before lunch, we show them what we found, and then we let the board do what boards do, which is protect the institution from outside threats once the threat is named. Even if the institution is also the person sitting in front of them. Even if, get them in the room. She nodded, pulled out her phone, started typing names, times, locations. She had the executive coordinator on email. She had Amanda on text. She had a private jet on standby at Midway because More Capital owned one, and her father had refused to sell it, even when she'd suggested it 8 months ago. 2 hours later, by 9:15, all 9 board members had received a message that said, "Emergency board meeting today, 11 a.m., More Capital Conference Room A, mandatory attendance, no exceptions." The replies started coming in. Confirmation. Confirmation. A question. A complaint. A confirmation. By 9:40, all 9 had confirmed. She set the phone down. Done. They'll all be there. Now we have 90 minutes to put together a presentation that turns 9 angry investors into 9 allies before they get a chance to vote you out. So get to work. We get to work. The we, she noticed, had become quietly automatic. He didn't comment on it. Neither did she. They worked. He at the desk. Her on the folding chair. Nicole had texted at 8 that she was on her way down. Ryan had told Emily to send her back to the office. We need her digging in the Redline archive, not sitting here. Tell her to find every email between Timothy and Whitfield and Crane in the last 6 months. Everyone. By any means available. I don't care what she has to do. She has to find them. Emily forwarded the instruction. Nicole wrote back 2 words. On it, by 10:30 they had a presentation. 12 slides. Clean. Brutal. No headers. No corporate softening. Slide 1. The trap, drawn as a diagram. 3 boxes. 3 sections of the contract. 3 arrows showing how they fed into each other. Slide 2, the parent corporation definition. Slide 3, the milestones. Slide 4, the rebalancing. Slide 5, the timeline. 18 months from signing to loss of control. Slide 6, the pattern. The 3 other Apex deals, the same structure. Each one had ended in liquidation. Slide 7, the victims. A list, 12 companies. Each one represented a city. Each city represented a family. Slide 8, who? The org chart of Apex Strategic Partners. With Brian Thompson at the top. Slide 9. What happens to More Capital if we sign? Slide 10. What happens to capital if we don't? Slide 11. What we need from the board to fight back? Slide 12. A single sentence in white text on black. We were going to be number 16. Emily looked at the deck. Then at Ryan, "You're going to present this." "Me? Yes, I'm a mechanic, Emily. I'm a mechanic who used to work in finance and now I'm a mechanic. I'm not standing up in front of your board. You are. Why? Because half of them already know my name from your father's generation. Half of them think I'm a ghost. If I walk in there, they'll spend the next 10 minutes trying to figure out what I'm doing alive, instead of paying attention to what's on the slides. So you present? I sit in the back. I answer questions only if I have to. Make me invisible. I will not be invisible. They'll see you, but they'll watch you. There's a difference. Emily looked at him a long time. You're going to make me do this alone. You're not alone. I'm right behind you. But your name is on the building. So your voice has to be on the presentation. Otherwise none of this works. Okay. They drove separately. He took the truck, which Emily had instructed her own staff to retrieve from the impound lot, and returned to him without question or paperwork. He'd nodded at the news without comment. The truck was now parked outside her office building. In the same reserved space he'd parked it in 24 hours ago. He didn't say anything when he pulled into it. He didn't have to. The symbolism made itself. 11 a.m. Conference Room A. The 9 board members were already seated when Emily walked in. Her father was at the head of the table. He had not been invited, but he had come anyway. Because that was Joseph Moore's relationship with retirement, and no one in the room was going to be the person who asked him to leave. He nodded at her without warmth. She nodded back without expectation. The other 8 were arranged around the table. Eric King, Christopher Hernandez. 3 more institutional investors. 2 former senators. The chairman of a major Chicago hospital system. A semi-retired investment banker named Gerald, who had been on the board since 1991. They were all watching her. None of them were smiling. She did not smile back. She put down her laptop. She connected to the screen. She did not introduce Ryan, who was sitting against the back wall in a chair he had pulled in from outside, still wearing the flannel shirt, hands folded in his lap. She did not introduce Nicole, who had arrived just before the meeting and was sitting in the corner with 2 binders. She did not introduce anyone. She just started. Good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm going to take about 20 minutes of your time, and then I'd like 10 more for questions. By the end of this meeting, I'd like you to understand 3 things. First, what we found in the Lewis Financial's contract. Second, who is behind it. And third, what we plan to do about it. She clicked. The first slide came up. The diagram. The 3 boxes. The 3 arrows. She watched the room. She watched the way the eyes moved. Gerald leaned forward. Eric King already had his pen out, taking notes on a yellow legal pad like a courtroom prosecutor. Christopher Hernandez was watching her face, not the screen. Joseph Moore was watching the screen. She took a breath. 40 minutes later, every person in the room understood what Brian Thompson had been planning to do. Not because she'd explained it, because the slides had. The slides did the work. She just delivered them. Plain, sequential, devastating. When she got to slide 12, she stopped. She did not read the words on the screen out loud. She let them hang. We were going to be number 16. The room sat with it. Then Eric King's voice, flat, direct. Without inflection, Ms. Moore, yes. Who is the man in the back? The room turned. Ryan didn't move. He didn't look up. Eric King's eyes hadn't left him. He looks familiar to me. I don't think I'm supposed to know him, Emily breathed once. This is Ryan Robinson. The silence that came next was different. Older men in the room straightened in their chairs. Gerald turned in his seat to face the back of the room. Joseph Moore did not move at all, but his hand on the table flattened, slowly, against the wood. Gerald spoke first. Robinson, yes sir, of Robinson Strategic. That's right, he sold to the Omaha Holding Company. 5 years ago. I remember the deal. I remember the number. I remember thinking it would never happen. He looked at Emily. He looked at Ryan. He looked back at Emily. You went and got Ryan Robinson to read your contract? Yes, he did it, yes, because... He paused. The pause was loaded. 'Cause why? Joseph Moore answered before she could. Because she walked into his shop and asked him to. The eyes turned to Joseph. He hadn't raised his voice. He was looking at Emily. There was something in his face she had not seen there before. She couldn't place it yet. She wasn't sure she wanted to. Eric King turned back to Ryan. Mr. Robinson, yes, you've read this contract. Yes, you agree with Ms. Moore's analysis. Yes, you believe that Brian Thompson designed this acquisition to result in a hostile transfer of control within 18 months. Yes, you believe Moore Capital Partners would not survive that transfer. Not as Moore Capital. No. Ryan finally looked up. The pale gray eyes found Eric King and held them. He wouldn't have left the brand. He would have stripped the assets. He would have sold the divisions piecemeal. He would have laid off 2/3 of your staff in the 2nd year. He would have walked away from a $180 million profit and a building with a different name on the door. That's not speculation. That's the model. He's done it 3 times since 2017. Each time on a smaller scale. This was supposed to be his biggest, the biggest one yet. Eric King set down his pen. He looked at Emily. Then he looked at Gerald. Then he looked at his hands. Then he stood up. The other board members watched him. He walked slowly around the table. He reached the back wall. He stopped in front of Ryan. He looked down at him. Mr. Robinson, he said. Yes, sir, we need you. Ryan didn't react. Eric King didn't blink. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know what Thompson does when he loses a deal he's spent 2 years planning. We don't know what kind of retaliation we're looking at. But I'll tell you this. If we are going to survive what is about to happen to us, we need a man in the room who has been at the table with people like Brian Thompson before. We need someone who's already played this game. And we need them at the level of advice that goes directly to the CEO and nowhere else. He paused. Whatever you charge, whatever your rate, whatever you want, name it. We'll pay it. He paused again. Don't make us beg. Ryan didn't speak. The room waited. Emily watched him. She didn't know what he was going to say. She had told him on the drive down that she wouldn't ask him for anything more than what he'd already given her. She had meant it. She had also known that it wouldn't be her ask that decided this. It would be his answer. He looked at the floor. He looked at Eric King. Then he stood up. Slowly. He was the same height as Eric King, but somehow looked smaller, like a man who had been making himself smaller on purpose. For so long he'd forgotten how to be the size he actually was. He spoke quietly. "I don't want your money, Mr. King. I have more of it than I know what to do with. I haven't worked in finance in 5 years, because I didn't like who I was when I worked in finance. I made decisions back then that I still wake up at 3 in the morning thinking about. I told myself I was done. I told my daughter I was done." He paused. "But Brian Thompson is something I should have stopped 10 years ago. And I didn't." And he kept going. "And the only way I get to live the rest of my life and look at my daughter at dinner and not flinch is if I help your CEO finish what I started to walk away from." He looked at Emily, not at Eric. At Emily, so. "I'll help. But I'm not on payroll. I'm not on the org chart. I'm not on any board. I report to one person in this building, and one person only, and that's the woman I'm looking at right now. Are we clear?" Eric King held out his hand. "Mr. Robinson, we're clear." They shook. The handshake was long. It was the kind of handshake old men in suits used when they were sealing something they both understood was historic. The board was now committed. The board was now armed. The board was now no longer the threat. She felt the danger inside the room ease, like a held breath letting go. And then Joseph Moore stood up. He walked the length of the table. Slowly, the eyes turned. He walked past Eric King, past Gerald, past Christopher Hernandez, past her, without looking at her. He walked to the back of the room. He stopped in front of Ryan. He held out his hand. "Ryan," he said, "the first name." Joseph Moore had not called another man by his first name in this building since Emily was a child. "Mr. Moore," Ryan said. "Joseph." The two men looked at each other. "You saved my daughter's company," Joseph said. "From a man neither of us had the wisdom to see coming. So thank you." Ryan shook his hand. "Sir," they held the shake. Joseph spoke quietly enough that only Ryan and Emily, who was standing 5 feet away, could hear it. "I was your father's age when I built this place from a single office. He built his. He looked at me when I was 30 and told me I'd never make it past 5 years. I made it past 60. I always thought that was the proof. But I think now the proof of a builder is what survives him. And I think tonight you helped make sure that what I built survives me. So I will say this once and only once. I am grateful. I am in your debt. And I'm sorry I ever doubted my daughter long enough to make you necessary." Ryan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Joseph let go of his hand. He walked back to the head of the table. He did not look at his daughter on the way. He sat down. He folded his hands. Emily had not been crying. She told herself afterward that she had not been crying. The truth was somewhere in the middle. There was something wet on her face that she didn't notice until 5 minutes later when she reached up to push her hair behind her ear. She wiped it away. She kept talking. She finished the presentation. She answered questions. The vote at the end of the meeting was unanimous. The board endorsed the postponement. The board endorsed the termination of negotiations with Lewis Financial Group. The board authorized Emily to lead the firm's response to whatever Thompson did next. The board authorized her to draw on any company resource she needed. The board adjourned at 12:45. They filed out one by one. Eric King stopped beside her on the way out. "Ms. Moore." "Yes. The next move is his. Thompson's. He will move on you publicly within a week. He will not be subtle. He will be loud. He will be ugly. You ready?" "I will be." King nodded. Once. Then walked out. By 2 p.m. she had called Jeffrey Lewis. 48 hours had ended early. The deal was off, not postponed. Off, she did not give him the language she had used in the lobby. She gave him the language her lawyers had drafted in the hour between the board meeting and the call. Material breach, misrepresentation, failure of good faith disclosure. Jeffrey's voice on the other end of the line was a man watching something collapse in real time. "Emily, yes, don't do this. It's done. You don't know what you're doing. I think we both know I do." There was a long silence. Then his voice changed. Got quieter. "Got something else underneath it, Emily. You don't know who you're playing with. Goodbye, Jeffrey." She hung up. By 2:15 the press release was out. Moore Capital Partners has terminated all merger discussions with Lewis Financial Group. The company looks forward to pursuing other strategic opportunities. By 2:30 Bloomberg was on the phone with Amanda asking for comment. Amanda was reading from the script Emily had given her. No comment beyond the press release. By 2:45 the stock had dropped 11%. By 3 the financial commentariat had taken sides. Half of the analysts were calling Emily a panicked first-time CEO. The other half were calling her something more interesting. They didn't know yet which one she was. They didn't have enough information. They would, soon. By 4 o'clock, 3 more institutional investors had pulled. Emily watched the numbers on her screen and did not blink. She had expected this. She had budgeted for it. She had a war chest. She had a board. She had Ryan. She also had something she had not had at 6:47 the previous morning, which was a sense, however small, that she was no longer the smallest person in her own building. At 5 p.m. she walked down the hall to her father's office. He was at his desk. He looked up when she came in. He did not stand. She did not sit. She just stood in the doorway. Dad, yes, thank you. He looked at her for a moment that felt longer than it was. Catherine? Emily? He blinked. Emily, he had not used that name in 19 years. Emily? Tonight you don't go home alone. Take Amanda with you to dinner. Take Nicole. Take anyone. But don't be alone. Why? Because tonight Thompson finds out. And we don't know what he does the night he finds out. I'll be fine, Catherine. The old name came back. He couldn't help it. Take someone. Please, she nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't take Amanda. She didn't take Nicole. She took Ryan, who had refused to leave the building until she did. He drove her home in his truck, because she had told him she didn't want to drive the Mercedes. He didn't comment. He parked outside her condo at 6:15 and walked her to the lobby. She turned at the door. Ryan, yes, come up, I'm not. Just for an hour, not for anything else. Just so I'm not in that apartment alone for the first hour. Please. He nodded. They went up. The elevator was silent. He stood with his hands behind his back, the way men used to stand in elevators in the 1950s. The condo was on the 22nd floor. The lights of the city came up through the glass walls. She poured them both water from the filtered pitcher in the refrigerator. She gave him a glass. He took it. He didn't drink. He looked around. This is big. It's empty. Mostly, she sat on the couch. He sat in the chair across from her. He kept his coat on. There was a long pause. Then he said, "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry. You should eat something." There was a knock at the door. She frowned. She got up. She opened it. A delivery man with a brown paper bag. "Pizza," he said. "Card on file." She blinked. Then she remembered. She'd ordered nothing. He had. "Lou Malnati's," the bag said. "Ryan," she said, turning. "You ordered pizza. From my apartment. Without telling me. Lily told me what to order," he said, hands still folded in his lap. 40 minutes ago. So it should be the right one." She didn't know what to say. She paid the delivery man. She closed the door. She brought the pizza to the table. She opened the box. Sausage, mushroom, extra cheese, the exact pizza she would have ordered if she had been able to order anything. How did Lily know what pizza I'd want? Lily's 8. She has theories about everyone. What was her theory about me? He didn't smile. But something in his face moved a fraction. She said you looked like a sausage and mushroom person. She'd only seen a picture. The picture had been on Ryan's phone, on the way home from the board meeting, during a conversation they had not had on purpose, in which Lily had asked who he was driving, and he had said a woman whose company he was helping. And Lily had asked to see her, and he had shown her a photograph from a Bloomberg article from a year ago, and Lily had said, and asked him to bring her home so they could meet. And Ryan had said, soon, and Lily had ordered pizza to her apartment in protest because Lily was 8, and that's how Lily fought back. Emily sat down at the table. She picked up a piece of pizza. She ate it. He ate one too. They didn't talk for a few minutes. She wasn't sure when she had last eaten in her own apartment in front of another person. She couldn't remember. She wasn't going to think about it now. She finished the slice. She picked up another. Tell me about Lily. He told her about Lily. He talked for 15 minutes. He talked about the science fair project that had won her honorable mention last May, about her current refusal to wear anything that wasn't either red or black, about the way she'd started ordering pizzas to strangers' addresses as a form of social experiment, until Ryan had explained to her how credit cards worked, and she had downgraded to ordering them to people she actually knew. He talked about Lily's mother. Briefly, he said her name, Rebecca. He said she'd been a teacher. He said she'd been sick for 2 years before she died. He said Lily had been 4 when she lost her, and he didn't think Lily remembered her face anymore, only the smell of her hair. Emily listened. She didn't interrupt. When he was done, she said, "You're a good father." He looked at the table. "I'm trying." "That's the same thing." He didn't argue. At 8:30 he stood up. "I should go." "Yeah." He walked to the door. He turned. "Tomorrow we start working on what Thompson does next. We need to know his playbook. I'm going to need 3 things from you. Tell me, 1, a list of every reporter who's ever covered Moore Capital. 2, your communications team, the whole team, reporting to you, not to your father, not to the board, to you. 3, a senior associate from your IT department. Someone who can tell me what kind of digital security you have. Done. He nodded. Good night, Emily. Good night, Ryan. He left. She closed the door. She leaned against it. She did not cry. She had not cried in 19 years. But she did something close to it. She slid down to the floor with her back against the door, and she sat there for 10 minutes with her eyes closed. Thursday. 3 days after the postponement, 2 days after the press release, the story had moved from the financial pages to the front page of the Tribune. Young Moore CEO walks away from 2B deal. The angle had not yet broken in her favor. The analysts were still split. Half called her brave, half called her unsteady. The institutional pullouts had stabilized at 5. The stock had stopped bleeding. It was now down 14% overall, but the daily volatility was smaller. The market had not yet decided whether to forgive her. It was watching, then it came. 11 a.m. Thursday, the Financial Chronicle. The same outlet that had been leaking unfavorable items about Moore Capital for weeks. The headline: Moore Capital Partners under SEC investigation for disclosure violations. Emily read the first sentence 3 times. Then she picked up her phone. She called Timothy. He answered immediately. Tim, Emily, what is going on? I just saw it. I'm reading it now. Is it true? No. Are you sure? Yes, Emily. We have not been contacted by the SEC about anything. We have no open inquiries. We have no closed inquiries. This is fabricated. Get to the source. Yes. Yes, the article cited 2 unnamed sources at the SEC. The article cited internal documents the reporter claimed to have reviewed. The article cited specific procedural violations during Moore Capital's recent cancelled merger. The article described, in detail, conversations in Conference Room A on Wednesday at 11 a.m. The conversations were fabricated. But the room was right. The time was right. The fact that the meeting had happened at all. The fact that the board had been there. Someone in her building was talking to the press. By 11:30, the stock was down another 9%. By noon, 2 more institutional investors had pulled. By 12:30, her phone had 32 missed calls. She called Ryan. He picked up on the first ring. I'm watching it. I need you here. I'm leaving the shop. He arrived at her office at 1:15. He didn't take off his coat. He came around her desk and looked at her screen. The article was still up. He scrolled it once. Twice. Stopped at the 3rd paragraph. Read it again. Set down the mouse. Emily, yes. Who knew about the 11 a.m. meeting on Wednesday morning? Internal to the firm, me, Amanda. The board, Nicole. The IT person who set up the conferencing equipment, Joseph. Timothy, that's everyone. Yes, he looked at her. Did you tell Timothy not to call the board members back? He paused. Yesterday morning. I told him about the meeting. Not in detail. I told him to keep his afternoon clear. He didn't attend. He didn't attend, Emily, no. He wasn't invited. He's chief counsel of a publicly traded firm and you didn't invite him to an emergency board meeting about a contract he signed off on. No, he stood very still, then he said, we have to do this now. Do what? Find out which one he is. Sloppy. Compromised. Scared. We have to know. He picked up her phone. He scrolled to Timothy's contact. He hit call. Speakerphone. He set the phone on the desk. Timothy? Yes, Emily, Ryan. We need to see you now. Conference room A? Yes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Bring nothing. Just yourself. Yes. He hung up. Emily looked at him. What are we doing? We're going to ask him. He'll lie. People always lie at first. But the way they lie tells you which kind they are. He won't lie if it's the scared version. He'll cry. The compromised one will lie about specifics but tell the truth about feelings. The sloppy one will just look confused. We need to see which one walks in. Conference room A 10 minutes later. Timothy walked in. He looked tired. He looked like he had not slept since the postponement. He looked like a man who had been carrying something for a long time. He sat down. Emily looked at him. Ryan stood by the window, arms crossed. Tim, Emily said, I need to ask you something. Yes, the article today, the Financial Chronicle. Are you the source? There was a pause. The pause was long. Timothy did not look at his hands. He looked at her. He looked her in the eye, and then he said, no, Emily. He watched him. Ryan watched him. Outside the building, a siren passed and faded. Timothy held the eye contact. Tim, yes. Did you sign off on the affiliate disclosure modifications in the 3rd revision? Yes. Did you know what they meant? Another pause. Longer than the first. Timothy looked at the table. Then back at her. I thought they were standard. I see them in 60% of deals this size. I have for 30 years. I didn't read them, Emily. I didn't read them. He was crying now, quietly. Not the wet crying, the dry kind. The kind men cry. Without sound, without movement. Only the slight tremor at the corner of the mouth. I was tired. I was old. I have been doing this for 30 years and I am tired. The clauses looked standard. I signed off. I am not a source for any reporter. I have not been contacted by any reporter. I would have told you. But I made the mistake that let this happen. And I have not slept since Monday, and I am sorry. Emily looked at him. She looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Timothy. There was a long silence. Ryan spoke first. Tim, yes. There are three kinds of senior counsel in this industry. The sloppy ones, the compromised ones, the scared ones. I'm the sloppy one. Yeah, I'm sorry. Ryan walked over. He sat down at the table. He folded his hands. Tim, yes. You're going to step back from this. Today, yes, you're going to recommend to Emily a senior counsel from outside the firm. Someone who can take over the litigation we're about to face. Someone with no history with Whitfield and Crane. Someone clean, yes. You're going to stay on for transition. You're going to help us track every revision, every email, every contact between our firm and theirs. Going back 5 years. Yes, you're going to do it as the final act of a 30-year career. And then you're going to retire with dignity. And then I'm going to make sure your pension stays untouched. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Don't sir me, yes. Emily? Emily nodded slowly. Okay, Tim. He stood up. He walked to the door. He turned. Emily? Yes. I'm sorry, I know. He left. She watched the door close behind him. She did not move for a long time. Then she said, so it's not Timothy. It's not Timothy. Then who's the leak? Ryan didn't answer right away. He went back to the window. He looked out at the city. Someone who knew about the meeting, who was not in the room, who had access to the conferencing system, the IT person. Almost certainly, he turned. Get me the org chart. Everyone in IT. Names, tenure, salaries, family situations. Whatever you have. Now, by the end of the day, they had a list. 19 people. By 6 p.m. they had narrowed it to 4. People who had access to the room's recording systems. By 8 p.m. they had narrowed it to 1. A man named Andrew, 24 years on the job, 2 years from retirement. Wife was sick. Long-term care, out of network. He had been quietly bankrupting himself for 6 years. Ryan looked at her. Emily, yes, this isn't malice. This is despair, I know. Don't fire him. What? Don't fire him. Pay his wife's medical bills. Pay the bills, Emily. Set up a fund. Move him to a position that doesn't have access to confidential systems. Tell him you know. Tell him it stops today. He'll say yes. He'll be loyal for the rest of his life. And you'll have made one fewer enemy in a building you can't afford to have more enemies in. She looked at him. She felt the tightness in her chest unclench an inch. Then how do we stop the leaks? Because Thompson still has the article from this morning. Because there will be another article tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be another article. And another. Because that's his playbook. He'll throw stories at the wall until something sticks. Our job isn't to stop the leaks. Our job is to outlast them. Our job is to make sure that when the smoke clears, you're still standing and he isn't. So what do? We go on offense. We give a press conference. When? Tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. the lobby of Moore Capital. You stand at the same podium where you postponed the deal, and you tell every reporter in this city what you found in that contract and who designed it, and what they did to the 12 companies that came before us. Ryan. Yes, they will kill me for that. Not literally. But professionally, maybe, so I shouldn't do it. So you should do it anyway. Because if you don't, then he wins. And the next company doesn't get a Ryan Robinson in the back room. And the next CEO isn't going to be 30 years old and have a board that backs her. The next one will be a 60-year-old man in Cleveland with no allies. And Thompson will swallow him whole. And that's on you if you let it happen. Because you knew. And you stayed quiet, so what does it look like? It looks like you, standing in front of a camera, naming names. It looks like you saying the words Apex Strategic Partners out loud. It looks like you saying the words Brian Thompson out loud. It looks like you putting 14 company names on a slide behind you. It looks like you handing every reporter in that lobby a press packet that does 90% of their job for them. Because the press is lazy and busy. And if you make it easy, they'll run it. And if they run it, this stops being a financial story and starts being a moral one. And once it's a moral story, Thompson loses, because morality is the one thing he never bought. Okay. Tomorrow 10 a.m., we do it. She did not sleep that night. She tried. She lay in bed for an hour. She got up, she made tea. She sat at the kitchen island. She wrote the speech in longhand on a yellow legal pad because she did not trust her laptop. At 4 a.m. she was finished. At 5 she showered. At 6 she ate a piece of toast. At 7 she put on the navy suit, not the charcoal, because the navy suit was the one her mother had picked out for her the year before she died, and Emily had kept it, had it tailored every few years. and saved it for days she needed to remember who she had been before she became Catherine. At 8, she got in the Mercedes. At 8:30, she was at her desk. At 9, she briefed her communications team. At 9:30, Ryan arrived. At 9:45, they took the elevator down together. They did not speak. At 9:55, she stepped into the lobby. The same lobby, the same marble, the same chairs the caterers had set up 2 days ago, although now those chairs were filled with reporters instead of investors. The same podium. The same projection of the Moore Capital logo on the wall behind, except no Lewis Financial logo this time, just hers. She walked to the podium. The room went quiet. 10 o'clock exactly. The cameras started rolling. Emily looked into the lights. She did not look at the notes. She had memorized them. 3 days ago, her voice came out clear. I postponed the signing of a $2 billion merger between Moore Capital Partners and Lewis Financial Group. Yesterday, that merger was terminated. This morning, I am here to explain why. Because the public deserves to know. Because the markets deserve to know. Because every employee of every public company in America deserves to know how predators in our financial system are operating and how close one of them came to taking a 62-year-old institution and dismantling it for parts. I'm going to tell you who that predator is. I'm going to tell you what he was planning to do. I'm going to tell you how he planned to do it. And then I'm going to take your questions. Because there should be no more secrets in this building. Not today. Not after what almost happened. The man's name is Brian Thompson. He runs a fund called Apex Strategic Partners. He has done this 14 times before. I have the list. You'll have it too in 15 minutes. The packet is at the door. Now let me walk you through how it works. She turned. The screen lit up. The first slide from the board meeting was on the wall, simplified and recolored for press use. The diagram, the trap, the 3 boxes, the 3 arrows. The reporters in the front row stopped writing. The reporters in the back row leaned forward. The cameras moved closer. 40 minutes later, she stepped away from the podium. The room exploded with questions. She answered them, one after another. For 30 minutes, she did not look at Ryan, who was standing against the side wall with his hands folded in front of him. She did not need to. She knew he was there. His phone never stopped ringing. She knew that the man whose truck she had ordered towed 5 mornings ago was standing in the lobby of her father's company and watching her do something she could not have done without him, and that he had asked nothing in return except to be invisible while she did it. When the press conference ended, she walked out of the lobby. She did not stop for questions. She went to the elevator. Ryan caught up with her at the doors. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The doors closed. She let out a breath she had been holding for 3 days. She turned to him. She looked at him. He looked at her. The elevator climbed. We did it, she said. You did it, he said. The doors opened on 43. They walked out together. 26 hours later, the lawsuit arrived by certified courier. Apex Strategic Partners versus Catherine Emily Moore, individually. $250 million in damages, defamation, tortious interference, trade libel, a request for injunctive relief preventing her from making further public statements about the fund or its principles. The papers were 19 pages long. They were beautifully written. They were also lies, but they were lies written by lawyers who got paid $1,100 an hour to make lies look like a kind of math. Emily read them at her desk with her coat still on. Ryan stood at the window. He had read his copy on the drive over. This is the response we expected, he said. This is bigger than what we expected. Yes, it's bigger. $250 million. He doesn't think he'll win. He thinks you'll settle. Or he thinks the company will pressure you to settle. Or he thinks you'll bleed out professionally before this ever sees a courtroom. What do? We don't settle. We countersue. And we bring in real counsel. Patricia, Laura Clark. Technically, but everyone in Chicago called her Patricia, which was the name she had used for 30 years, before she'd legally changed it back to Laura, because her ex-husband had been a man named Patrick, and she'd decided one Patrick in her name was enough. She was 52. She had taken down 5 private equity funds in 22 years of practice. She did not lose. Emily called her at 3 p.m. Laura answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call. You saw the filing. I saw the filing. I also saw your press conference. I haven't watched a press conference twice in a decade. I watched yours 4 times. Why? Because I wanted to know if you meant it. And you meant it. I'm in. I'll be in your office at 9 tomorrow morning. Tell your father I said hello. She hung up. Emily looked at Ryan. She's in. Good. Patricia's firm bill's out at $1,000 an hour minimum. And this is going to be a 3-year case, maybe 5. The legal bills alone could. I'll cover them. She looked at him. What? I'll cover the legal bills. All of them. Out of my own account, I've had $340 million sitting in conservative instruments for 5 years. The interest alone covers what Patricia charges in a year. I'm not letting your fight against Apex be decided by the size of your war chest, Ryan. No, listen. This isn't generosity. This is leverage. If you fund this from more capital reserves, the board will worry. Investors will worry. The stock will move every time we file a motion. If I fund it personally, off your books, Apex doesn't get to use your bottom line as a pressure point. They're trying to bleed you. I'm taking the blood supply off the table. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, "You'd do that. I already am. Patricia knows. I called her before you did. You called Patricia before I called Patricia. I called Patricia an hour after the courier left. She said yes before you did. Of course she did, Emily. Yes. Don't fight me on this one. Take the help. It's not weakness. It's strategy. And I have not had something I wanted to spend money on in 5 years. Let me have this." She looked at him. She nodded. Okay. He turned back to the window. She watched him standing there. The flannel under the wool coat, the hands in the pockets. The man who had walked into her building 5 days ago because she had walked into his shop. The man who had now committed several $1,000,000 of his own money to a fight that had started with a Ford pickup in a parking space. She didn't say what she was thinking. She wasn't sure she had the words for it yet. She wasn't sure she wanted to find them. She picked up the phone. She called Patricia back. "Welcome aboard," she said. "Honey," Patricia said, "I've been waiting for someone to bring me Brian Thompson on a platter for 9 years. Buckle in." 48 hours after the press conference, the phone calls started. The first was from a man named Stephen Taylor, CEO of Taylor Industrial, Minneapolis, family-owned manufacturer of structural components for commercial buildings, 3 generations, 1,200 employees across 4 states. "Ms. Moore, you don't know me, but I owe you my company, Mr. Taylor. Apex approached us 6 weeks ago, through a front, different name, same playbook. They offered us a strategic partnership, $800 million. The structure was beautiful. Our outside counsel signed off. We were scheduled to close next month. Then I watched your press conference. I made my lawyers reread every clause. They found the same trap, same triggers, same 18-month timeline. What did you do? We pulled out yesterday, quietly. Apex hasn't been told yet that we know. They think we're just slow on the timeline. They'll find out next week when our termination letter hits. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm calling to volunteer. I'll testify. I'll release documents. I'll put my name on a sworn affidavit. Whatever you need." She didn't speak for a moment. She walked to a window, 43 floors. The lake was gray. The sky was grayer. It was the kind of view that had been her loneliest companion for 14 months. And it didn't feel lonely anymore, Mr. Taylor. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just take him down." He hung up. She set the phone on her desk. She closed her eyes. The second call came an hour later. A man named Donald Brennan, former CEO of a printing company in Cleveland that Apex had swallowed in 2019. Now retired, now bitter, now ready to testify. The third call came that afternoon. The fourth came the next morning. The fifth came 2 days later, from a woman named Brenda Wright, who had run a logistics firm in Tampa that Apex had stripped for parts in 2021. By the end of the week, 6 former CEOs had volunteered. 5 of them were men in their 60s or 70s. 1 was a woman in her late 50s. All of them had lost everything they had built. All of them had spent years grieving it in silence. All of them, when they heard Emily Moore stand in a Chicago lobby and say Brian Thompson's name out loud, had felt the same thing. Pafenson, the lawsuit Apex had filed against Emily Moore, had been intended to silence her. It had created the opposite. It had created witnesses. Patricia organized them. She had her associates fly to 6 different cities in 8 days. She took depositions. She collected emails. She subpoenaed records. By the 3rd week, the discovery phase had produced enough documentation to fill a war room on the 38th floor of Moore Capital, which Emily had cleared out and dedicated to nothing but this case. The Wall Street Journal ran a long investigative piece on a Tuesday morning that took up the entire front page below the fold and 3 more pages inside. The headline: "The Apex Method: How One Fund Quietly Dismantled 16 American Companies." The article quoted Stephen Taylor. It quoted Donald Brennan. It quoted Brenda Wright. It quoted 3 other former CEOs whose names Emily had never heard before that morning, who had been contacted by the reporter independently and who had told their stories without asking anyone's permission. The article did not quote Emily. It didn't need to. It quoted her press conference. The press conference had already done the work. By Tuesday afternoon, the SEC issued a formal statement. They had opened a coordinated investigation with the FBI's Chicago field office into Apex Strategic Partners and related entities for possible violations of federal securities law, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, and mail and wire fraud statutes. Patricia called Emily at 3 p.m. It's official. It's official. He's going to come back at you with everything he has. He's losing the narrative. Losing the narrative is when men like him get reckless. Good, honey. Reckless men are dangerous, I know. Just so we're clear, Patricia. I know. She hung up. She looked at Ryan, who was sitting on the couch in her office now with a folder open in his lap. He had been spending most of his days in this building for 3 weeks. Stephanie had been running the shop alone. Stephanie did not seem to mind. He'll move on you again, Ryan said. I know, it'll be uglier this time. I know, are you ready? She looked at him. I have you. He didn't smile. But something in his face moved a fraction. You have me. Brian Thompson walked into the Moore Capital lobby on a Friday afternoon in March without an appointment. He was 50 years old, tall, silver hair, a suit that had been tailored in 3 different countries by 3 different people, each of whom had been paid more than Amanda Perez made in a year. He was traveling with 1 lawyer, a younger man whose face was so symmetrical it looked engineered. The receptionist did not recognize Thompson by sight. She recognized him by reputation, which was how he liked it. She paged security. Security paged Jacob Walker. Jacob Walker paged Amanda. Amanda paged Emily. Emily was in a meeting on the 39th floor. She walked out without explaining. She took the elevator down. She did not call Ryan. She did not want Ryan in the room. This was hers. The conference room they put Thompson in was the smallest one. Glass walls, no coffee, no water, no view. Emily walked in without knocking. She did not sit. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Moore, he stood. He extended his hand. She did not take it. He smiled like that was something he had expected. Thank you for seeing me on short notice. You don't have an appointment, I'm aware. State your business and leave. The lawyer next to him shifted. Thompson did not. I came to talk to you about settling our lawsuit. There's nothing to settle, Ms. Moore. With respect. There is. The publicity of a 3-year case is going to be expensive for both of us. I'd like to offer a structured resolution. We drop our suit. You issue a statement clarifying that your press conference was, quote, an emotional response to a difficult business decision, unquote. The federal investigation is going to find what it finds. That part is out of my hands. But we can stop bleeding each other in the press. We can both walk away. Emily looked at him for a long time. She had spent 6 weeks imagining what he would look like when he finally appeared. She had imagined a kind of menace, a coiled stillness. What she had not imagined was how ordinary he would seem in person. He looked like any of the dozens of men she had sat across from at the investment bank in New York. Confident. Smooth. Forgettable. It was the forgettable part that made him dangerous. Mr. Thompson, yes, you destroyed 14 companies. That's a characterization I'd contest in court. You destroyed 14 companies. You laid off thousands of people. You stripped pensions. You broke towns. Cleveland, Tampa, Greensboro, a printing plant in Akron that had been there since 1948. A textile mill in North Carolina that was older than my father. You used the same trick every time, and the only reason no one stopped you was that the people you stole from were too tired to fight. Ms. Moore, I'm not tired. He stopped. I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to issue a statement. I'm not going to walk away. You're going to go to trial. You're going to lose. The federal investigation is going to charge you. You're going to do time, real time, and every person whose pension you took, every family who lost their living because of you, is going to watch the man who did it get walked out of his office in handcuffs on national television. Because that's the only language men like you understand. He didn't speak. The lawyer next to him cleared his throat. Thompson did not look at the lawyer. You don't know what you're starting, Ms. Moore. She had heard that line before. It had been said to her by her father the morning she'd canceled the deal. It had been said to her by Jeffrey Lewis the afternoon she'd hung up on him. It had been said to her by Apex's own legal team in the cover letter to the lawsuit. It was the line men like this said when they had run out of other lines. I know exactly what I'm starting. She walked to the door. She opened it. Get out of my building. He looked at her another moment. Then he walked out. The lawyer followed. Jacob Walker walked them both to the lobby and watched until their car pulled away from the curb. Emily stayed in the small conference room for 10 minutes afterward, standing, not sitting, not moving. When she finally walked back to the elevator, Ryan was waiting for her. "You should have called me." "No, Emily, that was mine." He looked at her. He didn't argue. The doors closed. The elevator climbed. She said, quietly, "I needed him to see me alone. He needed to know that there isn't a man behind me holding the strings. There's just me. I needed him to know that. He knows, yeah, he's afraid of you now. I know." The doors opened on 43. They walked out together. On a Saturday afternoon in April, Joseph Moore invited his daughter and Ryan Robinson to his house in Lincoln Park. He did not say why. The invitation came through Amanda by way of his assistant, which was the closest Joseph Moore had ever come to a social gesture toward his only child. Emily read the email 3 times before she believed it. She wore jeans. Ryan wore his flannel, because that was what Ryan wore. And her father knew that, and her father had asked anyway. The house was the one she had grown up in. 3 stories of red brick on a tree-lined street that had been quietly bought and sold by Chicago money for 140 years. The dining room looked out onto a small garden that her mother had planted in 1989, and that her father had paid a gardener to maintain ever after, even when he was no longer sure why. Karen Moore had died of cancer when Emily was 12. Joseph had never remarried. He had also, for 19 years, never spoken her name in his daughter's presence. He spoke it that afternoon. They were halfway through the meal. He set down his fork. He folded his hands. He looked at Emily. "Your mother picked out the wallpaper in this room in 1991. I remember because I told her it was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen." Emily set her own fork down. Ryan looked at the plate in front of him and stayed very still. "She told me it was a tree of life pattern from a designer in upstate New York. She had ordered it through a catalog. It cost more than I thought wallpaper should cost. I let her have it because I had not let her have most other things she had wanted in the previous 5 years." His voice was steady. He did not look up. "After she died, I considered taking it down. I never did. I think now I left it up because it was the only argument I ever won by losing. She wanted the wallpaper. I gave it to her. 6 months later she was gone. And every time I sat in this room I remembered I had been small about it. Dad." "Let me finish, Emily." She closed her mouth. "I have been small about a lot of things. About you most of all. Your mother and I did not agree about how to raise you. She wanted you to have a childhood. I wanted you to have armor. She lost the argument because she got sick. And after she was gone, I doubled down on the armor, because I had decided that if she was not going to be here to protect you, I was going to make sure you didn't need anyone to. I built you into a CEO. I did not build you into a person." He paused. "What I'm telling you is, I watched you stand in a lobby this winter and tell every porter in Chicago what Brian Thompson was. I watched you do it without my permission, without my backing, without my approval. And the man your mother had been afraid I would make you into would not have done that. He would have settled. He would have spun. He would have buried the story. You did the opposite. Which means somewhere in there, my wife won. Which means somewhere in there, despite my best efforts, my daughter became the person her mother always thought she could be." Emily did not cry. She told herself she did not cry. Ryan looked at the wallpaper. "I'm sorry I doubted you long enough to make Ryan necessary. I'm sorry I have called you Catherine for 19 years because I could not bear to call you what your mother called you. I'm sorry I did not protect the part of you that was hers." He looked up, "And I'm grateful for the man across from you. Your mother would have liked him. She always said the men worth keeping were the ones who knew how to listen. So, welcome to my table, Ryan." Ryan nodded once. "Thank you, sir. Joseph." "Joseph." Emily wiped her face. She did not know when she had started crying. She did not care. She was not Catherine in this room. She was Emily. She had been Emily the whole time. They finished the meal. Joseph poured coffee. He asked Ryan about the shop. Ryan answered. Joseph asked him about Lily. Ryan answered. At one point Joseph asked Lily's name a second time, just to hear it again, and Emily realized her father had not been told the name of a child by a man he respected in a very long time. They left at 5 p.m. Ryan drove. Emily looked out the window at the streets of the neighborhood she had grown up in. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "He called me Emily." "He did. He's never done that." "I know. I don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything with it. He gave it to you. It's yours now." She looked at him. She put her hand over his on the gearshift. He didn't move it away. They drove home. The civil trial began on a Monday in late September. It lasted 3 weeks. Patricia ran it like a symphony. She put Emily on the stand for half a day and Ryan on the stand for a full day and the 6 former CEOs on the stand for 2 days each. She put a forensic accountant on the stand who walked the jury through the apex shell structure with diagrams so simple a high school freshman could have followed them. She put Brian Thompson on the stand on day 14. He had not wanted to testify. His lawyers had advised against it. He had taken the stand anyway because he was a man who believed his presence could fix anything. Patricia had him for 6 hours. By hour 3, the jury was no longer making eye contact with him. By hour 4, 2 of them were taking notes that looked nothing like the notes a juror is supposed to take. By hour 5, his lawyers had stopped objecting because every objection was being overruled, and every overruled objection was making him look worse. By hour 6, Patricia had walked him into admitting, on the record, that Apex Strategic Partners had restructured its parent corporation 17 times in the last 7 years, and that each restructuring had triggered identical board rebalancing provisions in identical merger contracts with identical companies, and that the resulting transfer of control had, in every single case, occurred without a public acquisition and without a shareholder vote. She did not ask him whether this was intentional. She did not need to. The jury had eyes. The verdict came back on a Friday morning. Unanimous. Apex Strategic Partners had committed tortious interference, trade libel, and bad faith litigation. They were ordered to pay Moore Capital Partners and Catherine Emily Moore, jointly, $58 million in compensatory damages and an additional $90 million in punitive damages. It was a Friday. The verdict made the front page of the New York Times. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in October, the federal indictment came down. Brian Thompson was charged with 23 counts of securities fraud, 14 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of conspiracy under the RICO statute. The FBI arrested him at the Apex offices on Madison Avenue in New York. They did it at 9:45 in the morning, which was the time most camera crews had finished setting up for the 11 a.m. news cycle and were looking for content. The Bureau had not coordinated this. It was simply how mornings worked in Lower Manhattan. The arrest was televised live on 3 national networks. Emily watched it on the television in her office with Ryan beside her. Lily was on the couch behind them, eating from a bag of pretzels. She was 9 now. Her hair had started to lighten, the way her mother's had. She was wearing red, always red. On screen, Thompson was being walked out of his building in handcuffs by 2 FBI agents in blue windbreakers. He was not smiling, he was not speaking, he was looking at the ground. Lily watched the screen. Then she looked at her father. Daddy? Yeah, is that the man who tried to take Emily's company? That's the man. And now he's going to jail? He's going to a place where they will decide if he goes to jail. But yes, probably. Forever. For a long time, Lily thought about this. Did Emily put him in jail? Emily turned. Sweetie, a lot of people helped. The FBI, the lawyers, 6 other people who used to be CEOs, your dad, a lot of people. But you started it. Emily didn't answer for a moment. I guess I did. Yes, Lily nodded. She went back to her pretzels. She said around a mouthful, "That was good of you." Emily looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Emily. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He had spent 8 months saying nothing in moments like this. And she had spent 8 months learning to hear him in the silence. She walked over to the couch. She sat down next to Lily. Lily offered her the pretzel bag without looking up from the television. Emily took one. They sat together and watched the man who had nearly taken her father's company be loaded into the back of an unmarked sedan and driven away. The first letter arrived in November. It was handwritten, from Stephen Taylor in Minneapolis. He had typed his Wall Street Journal interview, but he had handwritten this letter because some things needed pen. He proposed the formation of an alliance. The idea was simple. 6 men and 1 woman, all former targets of Apex, all of whom had either lost their companies or saved them by accident, would pool resources and start a foundation. The foundation would provide free, independent contract review for mid-sized American companies who were approached with merger offers from private equity funds. There would be no fee. The reviews would be conducted by a rotating panel of retired attorneys, forensic accountants, and former CEOs. The foundation would be named the Taylor-Moore Alliance. Emily read the letter 3 times. She called Ryan. She read it to him over the phone. There was a long silence on the other end. Emily, yes. This is what stopping him actually looks like. I know. This is what we've been doing the whole time. Without knowing it, I know. She announced the foundation at a press conference in December. Stephen Taylor flew in from Minneapolis to stand next to her. Donald Brennan flew in from Cleveland. Brenda Wright flew in from Tampa. The other 3 former CEOs joined by video. Emily did not make a speech. She let Stephen make the speech. Stephen said simply, 12 months ago, a young woman in Chicago postponed a signing because she didn't trust her own contract. Today, we're announcing the formation of a foundation that will make sure no Thuzu other CBA that lucky. The press packets at the door listed the founding board. Stephen Taylor as chairman, Emily Moore as vice chair, Patricia Hendricks as general counsel, Ryan Robinson as senior advisor, unpaid by his own insistence. In the first year, the foundation reviewed contracts for 43 companies. 28 of those contracts contained provisions that, on closer reading, would have transferred control to a third party within 24 months. All 28 companies walked away from those deals. The foundation did not call itself a success. The foundation did not call itself anything. It just kept reading contracts. Joseph Moore wrote the foundation a check for $15 million in February. The check came with a note. Use it however you want. Just keep going. Lily made the foundation a logo with crayon and a piece of cardboard. The logo featured a small house with a fence around it and 2 stick figures standing inside the fence holding hands. Across the top, in red marker, were the words, people, not things. The foundation used Lily's logo on its letterhead for an entire year before Stephen gently suggested they hire a designer. Emily refused. Lily's logo stayed. More capital partners closed the year up 23%. The stock had recovered from the post-postponement crash by April. By August, it had passed its previous high. By November, it was the strongest year-over-year performance in the company's history. Emily restructured the firm's internal compensation. The lowest-paid employees received raises ranging from 12 to 31%. The senior partners received raises of 3%. A new policy required Emily to host a dinner once a quarter with 10 randomly selected employees from across the firm. She kept the dinners on her calendar in red, the way Lily would have, the way her mother had once kept appointments she didn't want to miss. Timothy Clark retired in March. He was given a retirement party in the conference room where his career had nearly ended. Ryan attended. Joseph attended. Emily made the toast. She said, Tim spent 30 years protecting this firm. He made one mistake. He owned it. He paid for it. He fixed what he could. That's not a failure. That's a life. Timothy did not cry at the toast. He cried in the parking garage afterward. Ryan walked him out and sat in the passenger seat of his car for 20 minutes while he did. Andrew, the IT director whose wife had been sick, kept his job in a different role with no access to confidential systems. His wife received the full course of long-term care she had needed for 6 years. She lived another 19 months. Andrew sent Emily a card after she passed. The card said only, "Thank you for letting me go home to her every night that last year." Emily kept the card in her desk drawer. She did not show it to anyone. Brian Thompson was sentenced in June. 14 years in federal prison. No possibility of early release for at least 9. The judge had been brief. The judge had said, "Mr. Thompson, you stole from people who built things with their hands and you did it with paper. Paper is not less than hands. Paper has consequences. Today you meet them." Thompson did not appeal. He had nothing left to appeal with. It was January again. 1 year, almost to the day. From the morning a Ford pickup had been towed from a reserved space on Wacker Drive. Emily had asked Ryan to meet her in Millennium Park on Saturday morning. She had not said why. He had not asked. Lily had come along because Lily came along to most things now. The sky was the kind of bright winter blue that happens in Chicago maybe 6 days a year. When the wind goes still and the lake holds its breath, the bean caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. Lily ran ahead toward a flock of pigeons clustered near the ice rink. The pigeons scattered. Lily laughed. Ryan walked beside Emily. He had stopped wearing the flannel under his coat at some point in the fall and started wearing actual sweaters. Lily had picked them out. Lily had opinions about colors. Emily watched her run. "Ryan? Yeah. Do you remember what you said to me?" "The first morning. In the shop, I said a lot of things. You said you were going to help me, and then you were going to go home to your daughter, and we were never going to speak. Again." He smiled, slightly, I remember. "You've been very bad at keeping that promise. I'm aware." She stopped walking. He stopped with her. A year of standing in lobbies and conference rooms and offices had taught her a lot of things. But the thing it had taught her most was that the words people needed to hear were almost always shorter than the words people prepared. She said, "Ryan, yes, marry me." He looked at her. He did not look surprised, exactly. He looked like a man who had been expecting a question for a while and had still not decided which side of the moment he wanted to be standing on. He said, "I was going to ask you at the end of the month. You were too slow. I was being respectful. You were being slow," he laughed. It was a real laugh. The kind she had not heard from him in the early months. The kind she heard from him most days now. "Emily, yes, yes." She stepped into him. He put his arms around her. He smelled like wool and coffee and Lily's strawberry shampoo, which she had not been able to find in his bathroom for 6 months and which she had finally accepted he was using on purpose. Lily ran back to them. She was 8, then 9, then 10 somewhere in the year that had passed too quickly. And she would be 11 by spring, and she had not asked permission for any of it. She tugged on Emily's coat. "What are you doing?" "I just asked your dad to marry me." Lily considered this. "Did he say yes?" "He said yes." Lily nodded. "Good, I told him to." She ran off toward the pigeons. Emily watched her go. She felt Ryan's arm around her shoulders. She felt the cold of the morning on her cheeks. She felt the city around her, the city she had once tried to swallow, and which had instead, somewhere in the year that had passed, swallowed her back. She thought about her mother, about the navy suit hanging in her closet, about a wallpaper pattern she had only just learned the name of, about a girl named Lily who had ordered her a pizza 12 months ago, because she had decided, with an 8-year-old certainty, that this woman in a Bloomberg photograph was someone her father needed to bring home. She thought about a man who had stood in an executive parking lot at 6:47 a.m. on a January morning and watched his truck be towed without saying a word. She thought about all the people who almost weren't here. She thought about the ones who were. She turned her face into Ryan's shoulder. The wind off the lake had no teeth that morning. The wind was kind. The wind was holding still. Snow began to fall, gently, the kind that doesn't stick, the kind that just shows you the air is moving. Lily ran past them with her arms out. The pigeons rose in a wave behind her. They stood there a while longer. Then they followed her.